Scientists mix rabbit and human DNA. You see, creation worship mixes animal and human DNA because, you see, we're all evolving. We're going to evolve into the next level of humanity. That's what they're trying to sell us right now. Everything in the New Age is pointing toward that. We're into our next evolution. We're going to move on beyond human form. We're going to move on beyond what we are as humans. Yeah, what a deal, huh? Also, the garland wreath. We see this creation and nature worship. And look at, on Columbia, the Freedom Goddess, look at the garland wreath in her left hand. Does everybody see that? It's a symbol of creation worship. One of Nimrod's primary symbols that Semiramis gave to him was a great tree. This is the Babylonian counterfeit of the tree of life. Now, this is just a tree that I went out there and I plugged it into the computer and came up on the internet, and I just grabbed this one because it's pretty spooky. When Nimrod was killed, Semiramis changed his symbol. In life, he was symbolized as a tree. In death, he was symbolized as a stump. And the stump was called the Yule log. Because what it symbolized was that all of his branches, which represented his vitality in his life and so on and so forth, in his death, all those branches were broken down and he was cut off. It's symbolic of his death. But then the serpent, Asclepius, restores Nimrod back to life as a new tree, and you can see that new tree right behind there. This is an ancient Ephesian coin, a drawing of an ancient Ephesian coin, where you see the serpent coming and wrapping itself around the Yule log. You must understand that goes all the way back, that is symbolic of Nimrod's death, and that the serpent now is going to come and it's going to bring life. You remember last week we had the statue of Minerva. And do you see there on the right-hand side, you see that broken pillar with the snake wrapped around it? Anytime you see a broken pillar in any kind of architecture, what it's talking about, that is a representation of Nimrod who was broken. And also Tammuz, which you're going to see here in a minute. But when you see the snake wrapped around it, that's talking about the rebirth of Nimrod. Nimrod's rebirth evolves into sun god worship, and this is how it works. Nimrod ascends into the heaven as the sun god, and this initiates all sun god worship. Nimrod, Marduk, Bel, all of Babylon at different stages as he evolved. Osiris of Egypt, Adonis of the Greco-Asian empires, Baal was in Egypt, he was in Phoenicia with Jezebel, and also with Israel. And Mithra of Rome. And we're going to talk more about Mithra in a little bit, because Mithra was the transition god. Nimrod impregnates. Now this is the folklore, Babylonian folklore, the stories of ancient Babylon and how all this came about. That Nimrod impregnates Semiramis with a sunbeam. Ooh! Semiramis has a miraculous conception. Gives a virgin birth, so to speak, to a son named Tammuz. Everybody say Tammuz. Tammuz. Tammuz is the divine reincarnation or rebirth of Nimrod, the sun god. Remember what the witches talked about? The sun god who dies and is reborn of the goddess. Semiramis establishes a feast in his honor called Yule Day. And Yule is just a Babylonian word for infant. Yule Day. The Yule Day feast becomes known as the birthday of the unconquered sun, because it is the rebirth of Nimrod in the son Tammuz, who is the image of the Father. Ooh, does that sound kind of counterfeit? Yeah. See, the devil hasn't had original thought in his whole life. All he can do is come in and counterfeit. But if we don't understand his counterfeit, guess what? We can get sucked right in thinking, oh, this is of God. And sit down at the table and say, oh, this is the Lord, this is so wonderful, and I've got all these goosebumps. Oh, I feel so good. Yeah, it makes me feel good. How many of you feel good when you celebrate some of these things? Yeah, we all do. The sunburst becomes the symbol of Nimrod, Tammuz, Baal, and all the sun gods. And you see here on the left-hand side, you see Nimrod. It's a statue of Nimrod. at the palace of Khorsabad in southern Mesopotamia. The picture on the right is the Nimrod's 8-spoke sunburst on the Babylonian altar of King Shamash. And there's a close-up of it. And you can see that there's 2 spokes of the sun that's coming out. One is a straight spoke, which is representative of the male phallic symbol. And then you have the squiggly one, which is the female yonic. And please understand, this is not something I've made up. These are things that I take from the pagans. This is what they teach. I'm teaching you what they teach, okay? And I'm showing you how it flows in and is part of our culture today. The sunburst symbol is also part of Freemasonry, and you can see that same 8-spoke sunburst right there in the top left-hand corner of George Washington's Masonic apron. Does everybody see that? Baal's sun symbol was a 4-spoked sunburst, and this is a 4-spoke sunburst that was on the altar of Baal in Canaan of Israel. Isis carries Egypt's sunburst between the horns of Baal. Remember we talked about the horns of Baal, and you can see it on the left-hand side there, the horns of Baal. And the horns now of the bull, remember the sacred animal of Baal and even Isis and so on and so forth, what was it? It was the bull, is that right? Yeah. And it was also, what's the sacred animal of Wall Street? The bull. Yeah. Israel worshiped the sun god in the golden calf experience. That's what the golden calf experience was about. Israel's golden calf, this is what most of your archaeologists will tell you, that this was the actual image of Israel's golden calf in the wilderness. And you can see that it's the calf of Baal with the sun disk in the middle of it. And there's a little added extra bonus there in the middle of that sunburst. Does everybody see that? The snake. Who does the snake represent? Yeah, Lucifer, old Slewfoot. Mithra of Rome began wearing the sunburst as a solar blaze that was back behind the head, almost like a halo type of thing. This transferred to the Roman Catholic Christ in the 3rd century. And I want to stop here for a minute. I want to help you understand how all of this pagan stuff came into Catholicism and even moved into Protestantism. Some elements have moved into Protestantism. At the 3rd century, there were 2 competing religions. One was biblical Christianity, which in large part still kept the feasts of the Lord. It was very Jewish in nature. But there were some who were moving away from the, quote, Jewishness of the religion because there was so much persecution on the Jews that if you kept, let's say, Passover versus the Ishtar celebration, you were persecuted. And so what they started to do was they started to move more toward the pagan celebrations. And so when Constantine came in, this was a big issue. And so Constantine said, Christianity is the official religion, but let's go ahead and just redeem all the pagan aspects of it and incorporate it into Christianity. In other words, what we're going to do is we're going to Christianize the pagan aspects of it. Presto, changeo. My father can beat your father at dominoes. Sprinkle a little water, say a little prayer, and poof, it's Christian. Yeah. That's what they did. And so that's how we get the sun blaze behind the picture of Jesus now. I mean, that's how it happened. And so Mithraism and Christianity were merged. They were mixed. Sunbursts are major symbols and Catholic expressions of worship. You can see right there on the top of the Pope's hat, you can see the 8-spoke sun wheel right there. Does everybody see that? You can see the 8-spoke sun wheel on his little post in the Basilica, St. Peter's Basilica, that he comes out. This is the banner that they hang over it, and you can see the 8-spoke sunburst in it. You can also see the sun symbols. Now, this is his apartment, and you can see the sunburst. Can you see the sunburst right up there? There's an 8-spoke sun, and there's another one right there. You must understand this goes all the way back to Nimrod's 8-spoke sunburst that he was worshipped through. Some of you are looking at me like a calf looks at a new gate. Why did I come tonight?